So let's get into our first topic now. Should the government raise taxes to pay for the winter fuel for pensioners? 0207 862 2222 is the number that you need. Keir Starmer's U-turn on his most controversial policy yesterday, saying the government would make more OAPs eligible for payments of up to £300, which used to be universal, of course. Now, he said he could up the numbers because the economy is improving. Things are getting better. However, Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch disputed whether the government really has more money to actually play with and warned against raising taxes to pay for this policy.
Prime Minister and Number 10 seem to be saying this is because the economy's turned a corner. Do you buy that?
No, not at all. That's a joke. We just had inflation figures this morning that shows that inflation has doubled since they took office from the Conservatives. He is not running the economy well.
Would the Conservatives support tax rises to pay for an expansion of winter fuel payments back to somewhere near where they were?
No. No more tax rises. This country is suffering because of the tax rises that Labour has brought in. Every week I go around the country and I'm meeting businesses that are sacking people, not giving wage rises. Some of them are closing because they can't pay the taxes anymore. So they need to find a better way to balance the books.
Now, restoring winter fuel payments to the 10 million pensioners who had it taken away would cost $1.5 billion each year. Now, would you back tax rises to cover that? And if so, who should pay? Wilfred.
Don't even come to me first. It's just getting me really, really angry. Every time I hear this word tax, it goes to show that the government really has no idea of the stresses and strains that we face in business. I mean, I'm telling you, we're still reeling from the national insurance that we've had to pay. It's an absolute sort of nightmare. The simplest thing for me is this, is that it needs to be means tested. There are a lot of pensioners out there that do not need any help. They do not need any support. Technically, I'm a pensioner and that I would get that. I don't need that sort of support. The emphasis has to be about growth. If you keep taxing and not putting a lot more emphasis on growth, we're going to end up in serious trouble as a country. And that is where I want us to sort of focusing on. Stop taxing us.
I have a lot of sympathy for what you're saying. I certainly think businesses are struggling. I think the national insurance thing is a nightmare. And I certainly think we actually are paying an awful lot of tax. And what we should be able to do is be able to pay out of that tax. But for me, I think winter fuel payments should be universal and should go to everybody. And I'll tell you why.
Oh, no. Go on.
Thank you. So I think it should go to everybody because I think the means testing actually is not economically viable. I think you spend more time fiddling around the edges trying to work out who should get it and who shouldn't get it. Already now they've announced today, and they're not announcing it because we're flooded full of money. They're announcing it because they've realised that their core voters are very affected by this, do not like it, and it's causing them trouble. And so they're trying to kind of do it. But as with everything, they're fudging it. So they're saying, we're going to look at it, but we're not going to tell you who we're looking at. We're not going to tell you how we're going to do it. Mm-hmm. So I do think if we're going to have to look for more money, a small increase on income tax for the highest earners might be the way.
So at the moment, it's 45% is the higher threshold.
And it should never go above 50%. We should never go back to the madness of the 70s.
45 if your taxable income is just over £125,000. So that means that after you've had all your tax deductions for things that you had to spend for your business, if you're left with £125,000 above that, it's 45%. Would you raise that?
I would never raise any tax for anybody above 50%.
OK, so would you go to 50?
I'm not saying I would.
Because going to 50 would raise £3 billion, and that could cover the cost.
Well, we don't need the $3 billion. We need 1.5, do we? So let's not run before we can walk. But I would look at that. I'm not an economist. Luckily for everybody else, I'm not running the country. but I do think that is the way you could look at it. But I do think the bigger point is I think it should be for everybody. And what people kind of fail to understand, people talk about wealthy pensioners as though they're on every street corner, and they're not. And if they are wealthy, and they were wealthy back in the 70s, just think how much tax those people, they have earned
They've already
this.
Paid
they
into
have
it.
paid
but
into
Wilfred,
this.
You are thinking, look, stop giving it to people who don't need it, but actually to means test, to figure out that you, Wilfred Emmanuel-Jones, actually don't need that £300, to actually get that process into the system is going to cost money.
It would cost more than giving you the money, which you could then redistribute. And I believe in people being fair
Let me say
about
something.
that.
Look, the country is in trouble.
Yeah.
We're in trouble, and we need to generate more income. We have to incentivize people to go out there to be entrepreneurs so we can have growth, so we could then all afford all the services that we need. So some people are going to have to make sacrifices. And therefore, that's what I'm saying is that we should it should be pretty simple. And I also think that you shouldn't really get these payments unless the weather determines that it's gone below a certain temperature. But we have to come up with something which is not meaning we're going to be taxed.
But you're saying certain people are going to have to make sacrifices.
Well, we're having to.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
And what a chunk of the population are saying, well, those sacrifices need to be made by the people with the broadest shoulders, the people who are earning the most. But would you support that?
Well, we don't have the broadest shoulders. I think that's where people are getting confused.
Well, the pensioners certainly don't. And the pensioners, don't forget, with the pension that they have, winter fuel allowance notwithstanding, have to pay for an awful lot more than they probably ever thought they would have to when there were certain kind of care systems in place and more healthcare that could be accessed without them having to pay for it. They're having to subsidise their own existence nowadays more than anybody ever thought they would have to.
Let's find out what people are saying at home. Patricia's in Surrey. Patricia, welcome to the show. Do you think we need to raise taxes if we want to give that winter fuel allowance to everybody?
No, I think resume the winter fuel payment.
For everyone?
But tax it, because it's never been taxed. It's been non-taxable income. If it became taxable income, then the very poor don't lose out. The people who pay a bit of tax pay a bit of tax, but you gain, and the very rich probably pay it all back in their tax.
It feels so inefficient, though, Patricia, doesn't it? Because essentially what you have is the Treasury gives out a whole bunch of money and then has to work out how much of that money it now needs to collect back because the people owe tax. I see what you mean in one sense. It sort of sounds fair, but in another sense sounds hugely inefficient, doesn't it?
Then the whole tax system is inefficient in that thinking. I think it works fairly well. The taxman knows exactly who pays tax and who doesn't, so you wouldn't have to have a means test as such.
Essentially, though, even if we want to continue to give it to everybody, to have that universal, that everybody who's claiming state pension can have it, it's still going to cost the Treasury £1.5 billion. Where should that money come from? Because taxation is not going to get that for you by just taxing the actual winter fuel payment. Where should you get that money from? Should the highest rate of tax, for example, go up to match what it is in Spain? It's 47% in Spain, it's 45% in the UK. Should we raise that?
I'm not an economist, so I can't answer that. But I think everybody would be quite happy to raise their tax by a penny or two. Yeah. Because the government clearly need it. They need to deal with it more efficiently, but if they need the money, then we should pay it. The places that have got high welfare standards, Scandinavia, for instance, but they pay a lot of tax, and perhaps we don't.
If you want nice stuff, you have to pay for it. It is kind of how it goes. Wilfred, penny or two in income tax?
I think what people don't sort of realise, they seem to think that people run businesses, got lots of money and they're rich and everything is rosy.
People think some people are saying pensioners have got a lot of money.
But hold on, but I think the thing is, running a business is really, really painful.
Yeah.
It's just excruciatingly painful.
No, I'm sure it is.
So why would you go through that pain if every success means you're going to get taxed and taxed and taxed? You just wouldn't do it. So I think we need to acknowledge that the people who put themselves out there, they're going through far more pain than somebody who's on PAYE. So I don't agree with this thing about taxing you because you've managed to be successful. You're getting compensated for all the pain you've had to go through.
OK. Patricia, thank you for kicking us off. Agnes is in East Lothian. Agnes, welcome to the show. What do you think? Do we need to raise taxes in order to pay for the winter fuel pay allowance to go to everyone?
No, I do not. I think the government is needing to look at themselves in the mirror. Mm-hmm. We have sent billions to Ukraine. What did Ukraine do to us in Britain? What has Russia done to us in Britain? Nothing. When you think about it, Russia was our friend at one time.
Right.
Ukraine wasn't.
So you're thinking that we shouldn't be helping Ukraine
No.
keep Russians...
It's not our war.
Right.
Have we not had enough wars in this country?
I think
we shouldn't be helping Israel either, sending weapons.
I think Agnes makes a good point about foreign aid generally. I think when you're taking the £300 allowance off pensioners who have worked and paid all their lives, and they see how much is going to foreign aid, and not just like UK, places like India who've got their own space program, but we're sending money over there.
Crazy,
it's crazy. Yeah. It's ridiculous. So I think we're being asked to pay more taxes, but actually we all know that there are other ways of doing this kind of thing that would better. I mean,
find the money elsewhere. I would agree with that.
And the Chagos deal. Why are we paying $9 billion when we can't afford to give our pensions? And I don't know what
I would agree with you there.
And when you say about we're depending on the weather, we live in the UK. I don't know any winter we've ever had where we haven't needed to pay that out to people.
Agnes, thank you. Derek's in Northamptonshire. Derek, welcome to the show. What are your thoughts? Should we raise taxes to pay for the winter fuel payment allowance, or find the money from elsewhere?
Oh, good morning, Alex. Panel. I don't think we should raise taxes. Mm-hmm. It wasn't necessary to increase taxes when the winter fuel payment was first introduced. I don't really understand why it's necessary now. On top of that, we are paying more tax in recent years. For example, the freezing of the personal allowance means we are paying more tax on increased levels of pay.
That's true.
Furthermore,
more people end up paying tax.
Tax because of the cost of living is so high, council tax is so high, food is so high. I mean, if the government wants to reduce the cost of the winter fuel payment, simply raise the age at which it's paid so fewer people are paid it. I'm not really quite sure why people should be paid more when they get to 80. I mean, that could be levelled off to a flat rate for all pensioners.
But Derek, don't we come back to the problem that everybody has raised so far, which is that if you want to have a robust welfare system, a good transport system, a good education system, a good health system, you have to pay for it. And countries that pay more in taxes have things that work a little bit better. I mean, do we not have to say, look, we're happy to put up with trains not really working as well, or our schools being in the state that they are at the moment, because we quite like paying fewer taxes. But if we want things to work, we're going to have to pay more in taxes.
I don't agree with that. Not in a million years. Don't think that paying more money is going to bring about a better service.
No.
I think one of the biggest issues we have about the service that we have at the moment is that inefficiencies, about the sort of culture. Mm-hmm. So that's why I think we need to look at that rather than thinking money is the answer.
You think that cutting efficiencies will make things...
well, just cultures, efficiencies, how...
People doing their jobs properly is what you're
and with
about.
AI now, I mean, it should be making the workplace a lot more efficient. So I think we have to get off this treadmill of thinking that more money is going to give us better services. It is not.
OK, Derek, thank you. Let's speak to Jean, who's in Essex. Jean, welcome to the show. What are your thoughts?
Hello.
Hi.
I don't think it's necessary to raise taxes for the winter fuel payments. I do think that not everybody needs the fuel payments.
Right.
I'm on a 20% tax, and I don't require it, but I think that the way round it is for people to apply for it. Because I understand the cost incurred by means testing. The other thing that I would say is, as I'm approaching state pension age, there are more important things to me, like the fact that my state pension forms part of my personal tax allowance. And that, for me, would make a much bigger difference than a winter fuel payment. I
think what Jean makes a point there is, you can really make a big difference with people opting in or out of stuff. There was a fantastic survey done between the Netherlands and Belgium, and organ donation was really high in one country, really low in another country. Culture's very similar, but it was the way the form was set out. In one, it was an opt-in, and the other one was an opt-out. Yeah. And I wonder whether this problem might actually be simpler in the sense that it is available to everybody, but you have to opt in to get it. So perhaps people like yourself, Wilfred, you said, I don't need it. You're not going to tick that box, but other people would tick that box.
I'm lazy. sod, basically.
Yeah, but if you don't have to do it, then you wouldn't do it.
But if there's free money, people will find, they'll tick that box. If there's free money, they'll find a way of ticking
Would you tick the box?
Not really.
No, there you go.
I'd
He's
be
not
very
going to admit
unusual.
it.
No, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't have the time.
Colin's in Liverpool. Colin, welcome to the show. What would you like to say?
Hi, Storm. What I'd like to say, Storm, is I'm a retired
It's Alexis,
pensioner.
by the way. I'm sure Storm says hello too. Hi.
Well, what I'd like to say is I do not need this winter fuel payments.
Okay.
I'm quite a wealthy pensioner, and I worked in the public sector for over 35 years, and there are huge, significant inefficiencies in the public sector.
Sure.
And one of the things you have, and what I would say to you now, is that there's a lot of pensioners who are very, very poor.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things here. A lot of pensioners are also very cash rich and very property rich. They do not need the winter fuel. So it should be means tested, and there is that option available now. And one of the other things I would say, which I find quite bizarre about this Labour government, is that they have not scrapped the bedroom tax, which they pay out millions in subsidies every year. It's a complete nonsense, the bedroom tax. It should have been one of the first things they did away with, instead of paying subsidies for the bedroom tax. The other point that I want to make to you is the British people now, I mean, I'm coming up to my 70s. When you take into account national insurance, income tax, fuel tax, airline tax, insurance tax, we're now getting to the stage where we're nearly paying as much tax as what we were when we were fighting the Second World War.
Yeah.
The amount of government debt.
There's a lot of the accumulative taxes, VAT, of course, there, Colin, that so much money and revenue has been raised by not stealth taxes in general, but taxes that are inherent.
I find it funny that people always go back to the Second World War when they talk about big taxes, though, because in the early 1970s, the top rate of tax was 93 pence in the pound.
Yeah,
my husband paid 93 pence in the pound, and now so now when people talk about winter fuel bills, those people who were earning that kind of money then, they certainly kind of should get the fuel bill now because they have paid in, and and that's what caused so many people. And the other thing that will happen if you do go that high, of course, is that people leave the country.
Right.
So that's why I said I do think we could take another couple of pence on it, but it's a 50% cap is where I would go.
Okay, let's speak to Sally, who's in Devon. Sally, welcome to the show. What are your thoughts?
I think that people who are 60 and now benefit from getting free prescriptions should stop that, and it should be pensioners, because multimillionaires and very rich people like Jeremy Vine are getting free prescriptions, and I think they could afford to pay for it. I think people who have long-term illnesses could get a special thing from their doctors. It's not going to cost the government anymore, and all pensioners should get the winter fuel allowance. But there's lots of things that you can get when you're 60. Some places you can get cheaper travel and things like that when you're 60. Well, if you've got to carry on working until you're 66, a lot of people's children have left home and things like that.
Sally,
they should be better off anyway.
Sally, I hear your point. Thank you for making it. And I wonder, going back to what you said, Wilfred, is that whether or not we are going to get to the point where the means testing, because of tech and AI, is going to become cheaper and easier to do. There's got to be a way, now that everything is so digitized, that you can figure out who can afford stuff, who can't afford stuff.
And it's fairer. I mean, I think we all want to be fair.
Yeah.
We don't want to see a pensioner who needs it suffering, and we want to make sure those people are looked after.
And don't you think they brought it down far too low as well, that the threshold at the moment is far too low?
Well, there's so many factors that determines whether a pensioner needs it. I think it can't be just on income. It could be the size of the house. If you're a pensioner and you choose to live in a bigger house, you know, it's what choices do you make? You should be helped accordingly.
Okay. Well, look, thank you for your call to that. We're going to move on, but Vanessa is going to be returning to the topic of winter fuel payments on her show later. She's going to be asking who you think